The other thing companies did was introduce certain new features so that the browsing and experience is much easy now. So my team, for example, introduced new features which help users in shortlisting the products faster. So, for example, I introduced some quick filters on list pages to first, for example, separate products which are essential and non-essentials, because initially only essentials were allowed to ship. So people can easily skim through products which they can receive right now, and the rest they can probably wish list for later. Then we also introduce certain other filters which will help them easily reach out to the right products. And eventually, over a period of 2 months, we personalize those filters. So if you probably go and prefer Nike and Levi's, you will see Nike and Levi's, while your friend who like some other brand like Puma or Adidas, they will see Puma and Adidas as a filters. So these are techniques or tools we developed during time to make sure we handle the shifting demand patterns. Similarly, if I talk about another part of the problem, right? Give you an example of another industry, which is ride sharing. They suffered major blows. People almost stopped traveling, and people were very skeptical to share rides with others or go into a car which that's not theirs. So they had a lot of skepticism whether A, there is a need to go, B, do they really need to share somebody else's car? So again, so this is another specific challenge which came in front of another industry like ride sharing industry, right? And this specific problem was not specifically from demand side, right? So it was a very different problem. How to manage the ecosystem and how to handle the underutilized resources. So you have a lot of supply which is there, and those ecosystem or those people are dependent on you, right? So if you see the drivers who had their EMIs to pay and they had very little earning. Similarly, in Indonesia, people who own those cars, they still had their payments to make, and they had a very little earning. So it was a very, I would say, difficult situation for those people. So companies came forward and tried to help those drivers in different ways or new ways. So for example, the the company where I work, they tied up with a lot of NGOs and government organizations and use their existing strength and supply of those drivers to work with NGOs and government to provide food supply, medicines to those people who live in remote areas who had less or no access to food supplies, and because they cannot go out to shop and they had less money. So a lot of organizations used their existing tie-up with the drivers. This helped drivers some earn some extra money, as well as it helped government and NGOs reach out to the poorest of the poor uh, with 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 ease. So they had a very clear availability of drivers who will work with them, pick up the food or medicines and take it to the right set of folks. And obviously NGOs and government also paid those drivers. So I would say that's a very good innovation. Um, this really helped drivers earn money while passenger travel and sentiments were all-time lows. It doesn't end there, right? So some companies took very drastic steps to protect the ecosystem. So my current company, Gojek, and their employees decided to forego their annual budget for appraisals, like and use it to distribute it to the ecosystem, specifically all the merchants and drivers uh, who provide their services on our platform. So the whole objective was that the whole ecosystem is more sustainable. It's I would say that was a very bold and good step to encourage and help the drivers during this specific pandemic situation. And this is not just about a short-term innovation. This is I would say, a long-term innovation where you try to protect and help the entire ecosystem. A few more examples how companies innovated. Um, so my parent company and their competitors, they also revised their policies to support safer traveling. For example, there was no cancellation fee if the driver didn't follow the safety protocol, like wearing the mask or having a shield for the riders. Similarly, the driver can cancel the ride if the passenger didn't wear a mask or use sanitizer before entering the cab, and they will also not be penalized for it. So a lot of policies were revised so that the ecosystem is protected and there is safer travels. Now let's move on to the fifth challenge, which I see in these difficult times. So this fifth challenge, I would say, is also pretty unique for startups, and specifically those startups which did not necessarily solve their unit economics. So there was a lot of pressure on startups to improve their unit economics and maintain their reserves to sail through this pandemic situation, and also preserve their capital, right? So you don't know for how long the situation may continue. So, and if you were continuously using your reserves to fuel the growth and using the incentives to drive growth, now was the time where the startups really felt the pinch. Um, and there was a lot of pressure from investor community. So startups who had negative contribution margins and a bad unit economics were under a lot of pressure from investors to prune down their incentive-led growth and come up with strategy for sustainable growth. Right? So you really pitch in for solving the user problem rather than creating demand by offering discounts. And specifically in this situation, right, no one knew and still don't know, by the way, right, for how long the situation may continue. And all the business and customer activity may continue to remain tepid. We don't know what will be the new normal. We don't know yet how many people have suffered job losses, how many customers um, have decided not to spend a lot of money. So all those things were making very tricky for startups and posed a very unique problem to to plan their future differently. Now, how did the organizations innovated in this situation? So almost all the organizations which survived, right, they all moved towards a more sustainable um demand generation behavior. That means they focused lesser on incentives and rather started focusing all the communication on the core benefits and safety. My previous organization, Myntra, Flipkart, they started communicating the core benefit that you can get things easily at your doorstep. They also start communicating things like contactless delivery. They also innovated and built features like the temperature of the driver or the rider or the delivery person was checked X time back. They also started to promote that they are taking stringent actions to safeguard all the delivery person who are coming to your doorstep. While at the same time, the discounts were reduced. So all those money which was going into fueling the growth actually went in making the ecosystem more sustainable. Organizations started to work towards improving their bottom line. This means that companies control their burns and create a roadmap for sustainable and long-term growth. As the famous saying goes, right? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So in this situation, the pandemic really helped or forced the startups to think differently. identify their core strengths and focus only on that. A lot of organizations prune down or completely shut down the business units which they didn't see a future. So yeah, I won't go in details, but you would read about this. So Ola, Gojek, all shut down a lot of businesses which they felt did not um, go along with their long-term strategy. So that with this, I will probably end the short-term innovation problems and the specific solutions deployed by the organizations. I'd also like to talk briefly about how companies focus on innovation in the normal economic scenarios, not necessarily limited by the current pandemic. I would highly recommend a book called Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull. He was president and founder of Pixel Inc. So this in this book, he explains his journey, how Pixel was formed, all the life cycle a typical founder goes through. The company had no funds, they still had to continue. They never compromised with their core philosophy. The president's let's say discussions with Steve Jobs and all the other things. But one specific instance I would really want to call out from the book. He, he mentioned that how specifically as they grew, they had to always think of new ways to innovate, right? He also talks about that future success depend on both giving food or nurturing something which is fueling your sustainability, like your core value proposition. At the same time, organizations have to start innovating and always look for new ways to bring the future growth. So the specific area which he feels that drives the core bread and butter of the organization, he calls them beasts. So in traditional MBA thing, you call them cash cows. So specifically, he says that okay, the organization should identify, find those cash cows, and then continue to build on that. And he specifically calls them beasts. So beast gets bigger over a period of time because it's fueled by more and more profitability, more and more following what they were doing good in the past and just following that playbook. But he also mentions a very specific point and an important point, which he calls as baby. So he introduced a term called beasts and babies. Beasts is something which fuels the long-term growth, following a traditional path. And baby is something where you are unsure what the baby can grow into. So you go into specifically, you get into a situation where you do not know whether it will be successful or not, but you still nurture the baby. And it's essential to feed the beast to keep the business profitable. But at the same time, it's very important to nurture the baby as well, to take care and create a culture of environment so that new ideas can be taken and they can really make sure that the company and organization is more sustainable and ready for the future growth. So it also it's very similar to what we hear usually, right? What brought you here will not take you there. So beast is something what brought you here. It's a cash cow, which which keeps your business going till now and make sure your current employees are paid on time, they are happy. But baby is what you it makes you ready for future. So baby is the innovation part, while beast is more like you handling the current situation. So both the things are important. There is no baby unless you have money coming on from beasts. But at the same time, babies are important so that you are ready for your future growth. So do read about this book, and you can also read the summary. But this is one specific point which I felt is very relevant for this topic on innovation. Last but not the least, uh, I will also talk about how the crisis helped individuals a lot of new things, as well as some good things which came out of this crisis, right? To quote a few e-commerce companies across the globe, they saw the last 7 months, they saw unprecedented growth, something they have never seen in the last 5 to 10 years even. And most of this growth was organic in nature. It was not incentive led. A lot of people felt e-commerce is important, and that's why they came into ecosystem. Many new industries gained traction, which were not growing that significantly earlier. So, for example, telecom companies, which provide internet, they also invested in improving internet speed, etc. Companies which provide home office equipment, safety equipments, or home gym equipments, all those companies gained a lot of traction during this situation. So, industry as a whole reshaped themselves. Many industries and professionals reinvented themselves. So, for example, teachers who were giving one-to-one coaching in person shifted towards online platforms. Right. At the same time, students who were used to learning from the teachers one-to-one or in person uh, changed their behavior to also learn on internet platforms, including my family and my daughter. So she started her schooling online. I mean, I'm sure most of us we cannot relate to it, but for her, she her schooling started entirely online. So very different experience. Let's see how it shapes up her future. Another positive thing which came up in this situation was the positive impact on environment. I'm sure we all have seen those videos and images where people in cities were able to see that scenic beauty which they haven't seen in their lifetime. So, for example, somebody were able to see Himalayas from Saharanpur, etc., etc., and then things like this. So that's another positive thing which came out of this situation. Obviously, the air quality also improved compared to previous years. So yeah, I mean, with this, I'll probably end the session. I wish all the listeners a very happy Christmas holidays and a very successful and healthy New Year. Um, yeah, and feel free to ping me on Twitter. I'm aware I am accessible and available at Growth Chap. That's GROWTHCHAP. So you can reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm very happy to answer any of them. Thank you very much, and yeah, hope to speak to you soon.